I am Lo-Fi Thrasher Lenny Blade, and because my channel has a lot of Tolkien-based content, I decided, because no one asked, I decided to give my 2 cents on the whole Amazon Rings of Power TV series that's coming out. As you all know, there's been a lot of controversy, shall we say? So, you know, people are bickering, you know, back and forth, and I'm just gonna, right off the bat, I'm just gonna say I'm not in either camp. I'm all of your enemies. So I just want to give you my thoughts, and also I would like to state that I'm not necessarily like a Tolkien expert per se, but I do like his writing, obviously. So what I have found is that there are 6 things that people tend to complain about regarding the teaser that's out now. And the first one is the timeline. Lore breaking, let's call it lore breaking. The second one is colored female hobbits. The third one is beardless dwarves. Fourth is black dwarves. And then we have misrepresented Galadriel. And then we have black elves. Those are the most common complaints I've heard. So let's start with the lore breaking then. Okay, so apparently this will take place in the Second Age, right? The problem with the Second Age and making it into a TV show is that everything happens very far apart. For example, Sauron arrives or manifests himself or whatever in Middle-earth in the 1500. He forges the One Ring in 1600, and then there's a war with the elves like 100 years after that, and then like 600 years after that or something, the ring wraiths appear, and then like 1,000 years after that, the Númenóreans invade Mordor and they capture Sauron or expel him or whatever, and then they finally go to let's see, there's the invasion of Valinor, and then the fall of the Númenórean Empire, or Númenor. So you can see that the timeline is very... the Second Age is very spread out, and then there's stuff at the end of the timeline as well. But never mind. So, because I'm not really sure what they're going to focus on, but the problem with this is, of course, that all the human characters will die, you know, from episode to episode. Maybe not episode to episode, but you know what I mean. Like, the elves will be able to go through the whole timeline, right? The dwarves, perhaps they could, you could have the same dwarves in 2, maybe even 3 of the main events. But the men would have to, like the actors and the characters of men, you know, they would have to be changed quite regularly. So that would be a problem, and they're not going to do that. So I can see why they're doing this, but I don't like it. I think they could have gone another way. Like, why don't... maybe they could have followed Sauron, you know? They could have followed Sauron's story, and then there would be no... You know, you could have Sauron as the main character. Now, obviously, they will have Galadriel, which is obviously an ancient creature, right? So she will be... From what I don't know anything any more than anyone else, but I would guess that she would be sort of the main, or one of the main characters at least. Well, I just don't understand why, if it's so difficult to make the timeline fit, that they have to condense thousands of years into maybe 2 generations of men, say 150 years or so, why not just create a new IP and just go with that and invent your own things, and oh, here we go. Why do they have to use Lord of the Rings? I know why. But anyways, also they could have focused instead. They could have focused on one particular thing, like the war between Sauron and the elves, for example. They could have focused on that and made that like a series. But anyways, that's just I don't really like that. The second thing is what did I say as the second thing? Oh yeah, that would be the hobbits, colored female hobbits. Obviously, female hobbits have been a part of the story since the beginning, so no problem there. I'm thinking about Rosie, for example. But so I'm guessing that the hobbits that we see in the trailer are probably. So we have the Fellowhides, the Stores, and the Harrowfoots, right? And the Harrowfoots they were described as having nut brown skin and hair. So I don't see any problem with that. What I do see a problem with is that the first records, even the first elven records of hobbits are from when they migrated from the Vales of Anduin over the Misty Mountains to settle in the Shire, or to settle the Shire, and then populate the areas around later on, like Bree and so on. So there's no mentioning of any hobbits in the Second Age. Now, it is said in some writings that they probably existed, but there's just no record of it. So I'll give that a pass. You know, it's possible. What was the next one? Beardless dwarves. Absolutely not. And people say, oh, but she's got little mutton chops. Doesn't count. Doesn't count. This is stupid. It's ridiculous. Dwarves have beards. The women have beards. Unless they find a good way to explain it. You know, maybe they could invent a cool backstory. You know, maybe she was forcibly shaved in shame or something, or an elven curse was put on her or something like that. But as a fashion choice, absolutely not. So that's ridiculous. That's a no-go for me. That's my personal opinion. No, that's a no-go for me. What's the next? Black dwarves. Okay, so before I go into the lore of what I consider, like the little I know about the lore, let's talk about science. The opposers to black dwarfs have said that, oh, but science, you know, if you live underground, your pigmentation doesn't change, you know, so you will stay, you know, white, fair, pale-skinned. Okay, and then the ones who embraces the black dwarfs, they will say, well, it's fantasy. It doesn't have to follow real-life science. Okay, but so if it is fantasy, why does it have to be representative of the diversity of modern society if it's a fantasy? Why do we need Mexican, Asian, African, Italian dwarves, right? I don't know. To me, I prefer my dwarves to be more like Scottish, sort of Scandinavian. But that's just because I'm a little bit conservative because I am a little bit of a Tolkien purist, so to speak. But hey, if we're going to talk about the lore, it's certainly possible to have black dwarfs. So the smith of the Valar, Yule, I don't know how, I always call him Ule, I don't know how you pronounce it. He forged or created the dwarves, depending on which text you read. And then he sort of put them underneath the earth of Middle Earth, like underground, as if it were a stove, right? And then they cooked, the 7 fathers of the dwarves cooked there for a while, and then later they broke out of the stone chambers and they each went, or were put, I can't remember, underneath the mountains of Middle Earth to create their own mansions or mountain halls, depending on which text you want. I prefer mountain hall because sabotage. And from there they spread out. So there were 7 lines of dwarves. And Tolkien has actually only explored 3 of those. If you think about it. We have Nogrod and Belagost in the Blue Mountains. And then we have the line of Khazad-dûm in Mordor, which is Durin's line. The most famous line. And I know what you're going to say. Oh, what about the Grey Mountains and Iron Hills? Now remember that the dwarves of Khazad-dûm actually went to the Lonely Mountain, and then they went to the Grey Mountains, and then they also went to the Iron Hills. So that's the same line. That's Durin's line of dwarves. And then we have Belagost and Nogrod. So the other 4 dwarves, is it possible that they were created with a darker hue? Yeah, I mean, if they have a good backstory, I can buy it if everything else is really good. Like I said, I prefer my dwarves to be the way I remember them, but I'm sort of open for different things. For example, maybe there was one line of dwarves that lived underground, but they tended to farmlands outside, so they did go outside of their delvings there, so the pigmentation changed a little bit, or stayed the same if they were created with a darker hue. I don't know, it's not a huge problem for me, if there's a good backstory to it. But I'm telling you this right now, if the black dwarves turn out to be the ancestors of Thorin, they can't be from that line, Amazon, you hear me? Because then you break it. But if you have a good story to it, I'll buy it, if everything else is good. What was the next thing? Oh yeah, Galadriel, misrepresentation of Galadriel. That, but she's a queen, and now all of a sudden she's leading armies to war and she's climbing icy mountains with a dagger. Yeah, a little bit ridiculous, but also if it's high fantasy, who knows what can happen. And even though in the movies Galadriel is sort of this calm, like queen, she has a real epic presence to her. Actually, if you go into the appendices and you read up on Galadriel, she actually, during the War of the Ring even, she repelled a couple of invasions of Lothlorien, or attempted invasions of Lothlorien. She repelled those, and she used her magic to take down the walls of Dol Guldur, of course. But I mean, this is in the Third Age, so what she did in the Second Age, I don't know. So I don't really have a problem with that. She may have been more adventurous as a younger elf, right? What's the last one? Black elves. I am sorry, the black elf looks freaking ridiculous. I'm sorry. The elven ears and like the trimmed afro. I'm sorry. It doesn't. It looks ridiculous. It's like, why does he look like? Why does he look like a high school student from the 2000s with elven ears? No, he should still have long hair because he's an elf. I'm sorry, he should. Oh, that would be awesome. Why didn't they give him dreads? And make him this badass. Why does he have to look like a whiny high school guy? I don't get it with elven ears. Did not like that. So anyways, like I said, I really hope this is good. And most of this stuff can be saved with a really good story, world building, character building, and all that. And I hope it'll be good, because more Tolkien-based stuff is good. I hope it's good. I may even warm up to the idea of like African-looking elves, or black elves, or whatever you're supposed to say. But I don't know. I hope it's good. I hope the story is good. And that's it. Now you can commence with commenting and calling me a libtard, or a conservative, or a commie, or a Nazi, because I am everyone's enemy. So anyways, that's just my thoughts, because no one asked. So anyways, cheers.